Another thing we can do with components is play around with their states. So by default, a component has a single state, but we can add more states to a component, and primarily this is used for simulating user interface elements or interactions with users, like rollover states and toggle states. And we'll look at that in a sec, but we can also generate our own states for our components, and that has various uses as well. Let's have a look at that. I'm just going to quickly put together or add another artboard for us to work with. Okay, so we can see here if I make a square on the artboard, and let me zoom in, and I turn that into a component with one of the various ways we can do that. So it's a main component. We can see over in our properties window that there, under the component section there, it's currently showing its default state. And if I go in there and edit that, maybe change the width of the stroke, I'm editing that stroke on the default state. But we can add more states, and if I click here and look at our options, we can create a hover state and a toggle state for making those kind of buttons and UI elements. But we can also generate our own states for various purposes. And just following on from the previous video where we were looking at using tools to create design systems, we can use states for similar sorts of processes. And let me show you. Let's create a new state. And what I want to make here is a component that has our series of icons embedded in it, and I could change the state of the component to view the various different icons. So I'm going to call the first one, I'm going to call maybe plane. So we'll chuck the plane in there. And then I'm going to go edit that state. And I'm going to pop the plane inside there. So you can see that the plane is a component, and it's inside another component here. So I've got to kind of move it into the right position. You'll see our bounding box adjust. So I might actually make our... Oh no, that'll be fine. That'll work. Alright, now let's go back out and go back to the default state, and you can see that our plane's disappeared because the plane only exists in that plane state. Okay, let's make another one. We'll make a couple just for the hell of it, and we'll call this one home. And I'll just add a few. Oops, and then we'll go into the home state. Oops, make sure we're on home. Go in there and we'll add the home icon. Go back out, so now I can switch between the plane and the home, or the default state. We'll make two more just to show where this could go. Maybe we'll use the world icon this time around. Oops. Clicking in, dragging in the world, swapping it over, and back to the default state. We'll add one more new state, and this state we'll call train. And I could go on. Pop that in there. Okay, so now what we have is one component, and it's over here called component 1, and we'll call it icon with states. And I'll move this one. I'll just leave it there, but I'll put a couple out on the I could actually just duplicate these, holding Option and Shift, and one more down here. Two more. So this is our original. Lot 4. So this is our main component. This is our 4 instances. So let's change the state on the 4 instances. So this one can be plain, this one can be home, this one can be world, this one could be train. So if I'm using this approach, I've got this kind of modular component that I can reuse and kind of change depending on the situation. And then if I want to go back and kind of edit the original I can, and it'll update across all of the other kind of instances. So that's kind of looking at the states of components and creating, adding to our kind of collection of tools that we can use in a design system. Let's have a look now at using states for making simple buttons and UI elements, because that's probably where that's where we're going with all of this. Let's make a new page, new screen. Make it the same size as the others. And we'll go all the way back to our first button, I think, and just pop that on the stage, and we'll make it a new state for that button. Which will give it sort of some interactive qualities when we are testing it with our users. Now, to look at how things kind of function, or to preview your XD work as a prototype, we need to preview it as such. And so this button up here is the desktop preview button. Let's click on it, and it'll open a new window and kind of display how our application website is going to look and how it's kind of going to function. Currently, nothing happens, but this is the size of our phone screen that we're working on. And when we add some new states to this button, we'll see it, or we can see how it actually functions in the desktop preview window. So let's do that. Let's make a new state. I'm going to go over to the default state, and oops. And because this is an instance of our main button component, over here in our properties panel, there's this little edit main component icon. And if I click that, excuse me, it's going to take us over to our main component, which is got the filled in diamond. So the main component is the component that I want to work on when adding when adding new states. So let's add a new state, and I'm going to create a hover state. Alright, so that's good. And if I make sure I've got the hover state selected, I can make necessary changes to the component. Like maybe when I want my mouse to roll over that button, I'm going to turn it to a dark grey colour, like so. But when it's at its normal default state, it's going to be orange. So hover and default. So over here, that should have updated in my instances here, so I'll just make a couple. Holding Option and Shift to drag those out. And let's preview this particular screen. We'll need to make sure that we've got this current screen title selected, or our artboard selected, and then we'll preview that. And then now when we roll over those, that hover state is enacted, which is pretty good. We can also make a toggle state as well. So, for example, if I had maybe I'll make a quick little button inside that. We'll just create a quick X. That'll do. Quick X for like a close button maybe. Group that. Make it a bit smaller. And we'll turn that into, whoops, don't know what that is. We'll turn that into a component. Call it close. And we'll have a look on, this is our original, so our main component. So I'll make a toggle state. And then we'll go ahead and edit that toggle state, and maybe it could be black when clicked. Go back to the default. So let's preview this page. And if I click on it, it will toggle to that color and on and off. Whereas the hover states hover when your mouse is over the top of it. We can take that a little bit further by adding some animation to our states, and that's kind of pushing us towards prototyping, which we'll look at in upcoming videos. I'm going to make a button that kind of expands when we hover over it. So I'm going to go out and grab an icon from Illustrator. So I'll grab this train, head back over to XD, and I can paste Vex. Whoops, did I grab that? Copy that. Back over to XD and paste that in place. I'm going to set the fill to white. And behind it, I'm going to put an orange square. Okay, and we'll group, and we'll also make that a component, which is great. And our hover state, we'll add in a hover state. And we'll click in here and we'll make a few alterations. Well, actually, on the default state, I want it to have round corners, like so. And then we'll create a hover state and we'll edit the hover state. And include in there a bit of text. Oops. Good, so default and then hover. Okay, now to get that, well, let's look at it currently. It's automatically going to fill in that animation for us, which is really helpful. And I'll just show you what's happening there. Over in the prototype panel, we'll just quickly look at that. We can see that under interaction, it's going to trigger the hover state and it's going to auto animate. So we don't have to do any kind of keyframing or anything like that. It's going to automatically instigate that, that animation for us. So another good use for states in our components, and that's sort of pushing us towards animation and prototyping and interactivity.